People who cheated on their partners, why?
I want to understand what was going on in your head. How did you justify it to yourself? Why didn't you break up with your partner?
She was talking shit to me the whole night, taking all of her success and my failures and rubbing it in my face. When she went to the bathroom, I took 1,000 from the bank and put Illinois Avenue in my pile. One of my friends is a compulsive cheater. She's talked to me enough about it that I kind of understand what's going on in her head, even though I still don't approve. She's one of those people who can't stand being single for any amount of time. She's super insecure and needs to be with a man to validate her worth. Unfortunately, she is also drawn to men who don't value her for the same reason. So she ends up in relationships with men who call her ugly to her face, sometimes even in front of me, and gradually lose interest in having sex with her. She stays with them way too long and usually ends up moving in with them, then doesn't want to deal with kicking them out. So they end up not having sex for months or years and probably both cheating on each other. I know factually at least 2 of her exes did cheat on her as well. She's also told me before she feels polyamorous. But when I ask why she doesn't start a relationship with a polyamorous man, she'll say things like, "A lot of poly guys are just looking for casual sex," or, "The men I fall for never seem to be poly." Honestly, I think it's all just excuses. There's always some sort of valid reason to hurt other people in your mind. She's not a mature or kind enough person to deal with her own mental health issues, so she mistreats others and then finds a reason to say it was their fault. I think a lot of cheaters really need therapy and use unhealthy coping mechanisms like casual sex rather than be an adult and communicate their needs.
Been the cheated and never the cheater, but my thought. It's fear of losing what you have because you fear being without, but that thing that you have is also not enough. Kinda like young kids with food insecurities, where they'll gorge themselves not knowing when they'll eat next. Except people aren't things, and we're talking about adults, so.
I had an ex who talked about how she never cheated on anybody, except this one time she had a new boyfriend who knew she was still fooling around with her ex, but he was okay with it. No, the ex didn't know about the new boyfriend, but that was okay too because he was her ex-boyfriend, not her current boyfriend. Anyway, that's when I realized I had stuck my dick in crazy. I didn't cheat on my partner, but I was the other person, at one time. And I knew, and I didn't care, because I was miserable and I hated myself. I'm disgusted by past me.
I misread this question as parents, at first. Was very confused.
He disappeared completely out of the blue for 10 months. I got together with someone else and he decided that was the right time to pop back into my life. He called me a cheater because we never officially broke up. I've never cheated, but I have been cheated on. She did it for control. She held it over my head that I was worthless for not conforming to the mold she wanted. Basically, just know I'll go find someone else to fool around with if you're not satisfying me, move. She also specifically cheated on me with other women so that I'd be less able to respond. That was the worst relationship of my life, at the worst time in my life. I was so lost in self-hatred and depression, anxiety, PTSD stemming from my parents. This all happened in college that I resigned myself to the way she treated me. I got so sick of her gaslighting me that I gaslit myself to avoid the arguments. I swallowed all of my boundaries to keep her from cheating on me again. I erased the word no from my vocabulary in order to prevent the fights that came from her not respecting me when I said no. In the end, none of it mattered. She cheated on me twice more in our relationship. It took me being cheated on 3 fucking times despite everything I put myself through to keep her happy for me to put my foot down and dump her. To this day, I'm more traumatized by what she did to me than anything that happened between my parents and I'm beyond disgusted with the person I was to let her keep doing it to me. Word of advice to everyone out there. Men, women, non-binary, doesn't matter. Literally everyone should hear this. It doesn't matter how poorly you think of yourself. You deserve better than being abused. Resigning yourself to disrespect, mistreatment, and manipulation will always leave you feeling 100 worse about yourself than you did in the beginning.
I asked someone this and all he said was IDK. I had monkey brain at the time, like what? Lol op makes this post and it's 90 people that know someone who cheated and 10 people getting bashed for heating yep about what was expected.
There's been a ton of cheating questions lately in this sub. What is going on out there? Now that Valentine's Day is over, people are getting ready for hot they them sooner. It's complicated. I was young, she was emotionally abusive, I felt like crap, someone else made me feel not like crap, it's a whole mess. Being human is confusing sometimes.
I swear to this day I don't understand why, except I wasn't happy at all in the relationship I was in. But it was just for a one-night stand and super poor judgment and it destroyed my relationship.
Honestly, it's been almost 10 years and I still don't have an answer to why. The only thing I can figure is it was a new woman who showed me attention. Not that my wife didn't, but I think I was smitten with the attention and didn't use the right head. For some reason, my wife stayed with me, however I wouldn't blame her if she left. My marriage now is much stronger than ever, but I don't deserve her or her forgiveness. The guilt still eats me up to this day.
My ex blamed me for her cheating.
I'm weak and caved to the temptation and lust.
Honestly, I felt suffocated by my partner's insecurity and wanted to experience something else. What I should have experienced is being single lol. Lesson was learned, cheating is never ever worth it. Once the trust is broken, it'll never come back, and the level of pain you cause another human is just plain fucked up. Even breaking up over the phone is better than cheating. If you are genuinely capable of cheating on your partner, you probably don't need to be in a relationship with that person. Thankfully, we're on great terms now as friends, but I still definitely wish I could have learned this lesson the easy way instead of the hard way.
I had a long-term affair. No reason I give will excuse the damage that I did to my wife, our marriage, and our relationship in general. I hated myself for it while it was happening, I hate myself for it now, and I will hate myself until the day I die. My wife has forgiven me, but I am unable or maybe unwilling to forgive myself. If you're even thinking about cheating on your partner, I beg you not to do it. Learn from my mistake. Not me personally, but my sister cheated on her husband. She was married, but her husband had been married to another woman previously who cheated on him. After getting into a car crash, he was put on high-strength painkillers that exacerbated his paranoia. Eventually, as his body recovered, but was still in pain, he started getting worse and worse, demanding to see and look through her phone at all hours of the day. There was never anything to indicate she was anything but faithful to him, and he didn't like being wrong. Over time he grew more and more adamant that she was cheating on him, and the more he tried to catch her, the more he was proven wrong, resulting in him getting mad at being wrong, making him more certain she was cheating on him, which she wasn't, proving him wrong. Eventually, he finally found something when he stole her phone. She'd started texting a coworker, using a cipher to explain that he'd started to get abusive. He was hitting her, pushing her around, threatening her, and somehow, he managed to piece together their code phrases for hitting, bruises, and things of that nature. That wasn't even the part that set him off though. What made his blood boil was that the coworker was a guy. There was absolutely no evidence of cheating, but he didn't need that because he'd caught her talking to a man that wasn't him, and that was good enough. That night, he confronted her over it, beat her, and then threw her outside, locking her out of the house. She started asking the neighbors for help, and eventually, the guy she'd confided in picked her up and took her to his place. They did not do anything sexual, she just stayed there rather than be outside all night. After a few days, her husband allowed her to come back home, and things quieted down, but after a few weeks, she lost her phone privileges. Eventually, she simply left while he was passed out from painkillers, and finally went all the way with the guy she'd be falling in love with on the side. A while later, she with the help of the rest of our family filed for divorce, and it was not a clean sever. Joint custody over one of the 3 children, he got full custody over his daughter from the previous marriage despite claims of abuse. She eventually fled his home at 16 to live with her boyfriend's family a few years ago and no access to the child my sister had with the guy she's currently in a very healthy relationship with. The silver lining for her ex-husband is that at least he finally got to be right about his suspicions, though he literally drove her away and into it, which he refuses to admit. She cheated on him because he abused her because he was afraid she might be cheating on him.
It was a shitty miserable marriage and I didn't have the cojones to leave first, and I was following the pattern of behavior I learned from my slutty parents. It was a mistake.
I did it intentionally. I was neglected for years. Kept trying to leave, and he always fixed it, then went right back to his old self. I figured cheating would give us no other option than divorce. I know it sounds terrible, but now that I am outside of the situation, I know he did it first, and did it for years. I had a one-time indiscretion. It doesn't make it right, I know, but the marriage was over before anything I ever did.
It was a particularly challenging game of checkers. No regrets. It was a particularly challenging game of checkers. No regrets.
I've never cheated, but I got very close to it several times. Always broke things off before things escalated. I've been cheated on though. Some cheating instances hurt more than others. He wasn't interested in me anymore or bored with me. I put on lingerie, was in love with him and always excited to see him. I didn't know what was wrong. After feeling pushed away for some time, I was hanging out with an old fling and texted him that I wanted to kiss her. He said, "You're gonna do what you're gonna do," so I did. It turned out he'd been doing hard drugs for most of the 2 years we were dating, and that's probably why he wasn't terribly interested with me anymore. Edit grammar.
This post is really separating out the people with growth mindsets from those with fixed. The people who believe in healing, forgiveness and the idea that one bad decision doesn't have to define the rest of your life, versus the people who want to see you branded forever without knowing anything about what led up to this moment and with no possibility of redemption or any chance to be more than that label. When I see somebody speaking up about doing something awful in their past that continues to bother them, and I see someone else heaping more shame on top of that and telling them they're right to believe they're a terrible person and they deserve to be consumed with guilt for the rest of their lives, well, let's just say I know which of you I'd rather get a beer with.
Nobody is going to admit it on here to just get downvoted to hell anyways. LMAO.
Our marriage didn't survive the loss of a child. I tried hard, he didn't. I still tried. Then one day when I was not even close to looking, a man who knew all the right things to do and say dropped into my life. I actually told husband about meeting this person and said I was scared and worried. If he really wanted to make us work, he needed to give some effort too. He didn't. I never should have given up. I am still with the guy, but I wish I had tried harder.
I never really loved my ex, and for some reason I felt bad about just breaking up with her. We had been together a couple years and I felt like the only way to end things would be to cheat, tell her, and force her to end things. Also, I was very young at the time and definitely wasn't very mature.
I'm bipolar. Not an excuse, but a reality. Whilst manic, I undertook risky and grandiose behavior. It was a horrible thing for my partner who had been supporting me with my mental illness. I regret every second, but also realize I was out of my mind.
Home life sucked. He was angry all the time. Our finances were a mess, but he prioritized smoking massive amounts of weed and would disappear for days. I was growing in my profession and trying to get the health care I needed to improve my life, but I couldn't afford it. I asked him to go to couples therapy and he said no. I asked him for a divorce and he said no. One night I met someone who made me feel alive for the first time in ages. It was a love at first sight moment. We tried to be friends, but it became more in a matter of a week or two. That guy ruined my life far more than my husband ever could, but it was my out. I knew he would leave me. And I was okay with that. I know no one ever believes this, but I loved my husband. I wanted it to work, it just didn't, and I couldn't live like that anymore. I cheated because the man that I loved more than life itself kept cheating on me.
Working it out with a therapist.
Not me personally. A male friend cheated on his wife of 8 years. His excuse was the GF didn't belittle or nag him over housework. She didn't make him feel inadequate. She made him feel masculine as a man who could provide for her. After leaving his wife, he moved in with his GF. They broke up after a few months. He went to couples therapy with his wife and realized he was in the wrong. He learned he felt great with his GF because their affair didn't have the financial and cohabitation stressors of a marriage and raising a child. With his GF, he had fun spending money on her. He paid for trips, meals, their rental and all expenses. Once the honeymoon was over, the same problems in his marriage appeared in his affair. He's now in the middle of getting divorced. His wife didn't take him back after therapy. She put her studies on hold and supported him while he finished his degree. While he was struggling with his career, she supported herself and him while she finishing her studies. She is the higher earner, works longer hours and does most of the child raising and housework. Her parents helped with childcare while both parents worked. He finished work an hour earlier than his wife. He could do groceries and pick up their child from her grandparents' house, but he likes to spend that hour with friends, colleagues, or goes to bar gym. She contributed way more to their shared assets and living costs while he was frivolous with his spending. He stands to lose everything. Any savings he had he spent on his affair. Our circle gave him hell for what he did.
Plenty of people experience trauma and low self-worth without turning into cheating pieces of.
My ex-husband cheated on me for the entire 11-12 years of our marriage. I was able to count at least 25 women that he had been with over that time. And that's just the ones I knew about. Asked him once why. Out of the many excuses he provided, one stuck in my mind. It was what I believed to be the most honest. He said that it was about the chase and the rush it gave him, almost getting caught. He did it merely for the adrenaline rush. What a dick. He ruined me just for the rush? I was 100% faithful the whole time. So after I finally asked for a divorce, I started seeing someone else. My ex was in the Marine Corps stationed in Okinawa at the time, cheating. Of course, I was in the States with our children 2-7. I hooked up with this guy that was tall, handsome, and sculpted. He was eye candy and amazing in bed. I brought him home and we fucked in mine and my husband's bed, our shower, closet, floor, all over that bedroom. Little did I know that my Bill had set up my webcam in a way that my ex could see everything that was going on. Computer was in our room and recorded. I didn't find this out until we went to court for custody of our kids. There I was on video smoking weed and getting pounded for hours. Seeing his little wifey having orgasm after orgasm while getting railed by another man fucked him up pretty bad. All I could think was, that's what you get. Hope you enjoyed it, because I did.
Sometimes you date someone who is manipulative and emotionally abusive, who withholds emotional or physical intimacy. They make you feel like there's something wrong with you and you need to change to deserve their love. But you're young and in love and don't see the red flags. Because of this, you don't want to break up. But you're unhappy in the relationship. You don't intend to cheat on them or hurt them, but you get drunk and you have an opportunity and you can't say no. It's often not really intentional and just a really bad coping mechanism for an unhealthy relationship. And it's something you deeply regret after.
We didn't have sex. I'm talking for 2 years. Stayed because of kids.
I was the one that got cheated on. But when I asked her, she said, "You don't understand my attraction to him. Him, a mutual friend."
I was married and I chose the wrong woman. She wasn't sexually attracted to me, as I later figured out, and didn't give me any sex. But it wasn't even about the sex. I felt like I wasn't being heard. She didn't even care about how I felt. She didn't even try to understand how much pain I was going through, to be in a young, sexless marriage, and also not be heard or loved. A heat-of-the-moment mistake. Drunk at a party, one thing led to another, then boom. I have never felt such regret and revulsion than at what I did. I broke down crying to my girlfriend, who said she never wanted to see me again. It was terrible. I felt like a scumbag and haven't been in a relationship since. A heat-of-the-moment mistake. Drunk at a party, one thing led to another, then boom. I have never felt such regret and revulsion than at what I did. I broke down crying to my girlfriend, who said she never wanted to see me again. It was terrible. I felt like a scumbag and haven't been in a relationship since.
Because she cheated first. Then it was tit for tat and we of course broke up. Years later, of course.
TLDR, I was still communicating with an ex going into a new relationship and wasn't honest about it. Technically might not be cheating, but I wasn't honest from the beginning. Continued to talk with one of my ex as friends. Maybe not in a romantic way, but it was often, and if my GF at the time asked to look at the chats I would be hesitant to show. GF at the time also made it clear that she didn't tolerate anything like that and had a history with another guy that was hung up on his ex. I liked her a lot and didn't want to ruin my chances with her, so I lied and said I didn't have any contact with my ex anymore. In retrospect, I probably wasn't ready for another relationship, even though this was about a year after breaking up with my ex. Another factor might have been that I wasn't the happiest with the relationship at the time and expressed these feelings right before it all blew up. Going on a tangent here, but I've realized since then that a lot of the lack of connection with the GF was really my own fault, and I kinda self-sabotaged my own ability to connect cause of some past traumas. Sad. Anyways, she found out in a sort of spectacular way and then the same day blocked me on every communication channel. Was I wrong? Yes. I feel guilty about it, and honestly I still think about her a lot. Do I think it was necessarily a relationship killer? No, but what happened happened, and in spite of some guilt I've tried to not be too hard on myself for this. What have I learned? Well, I've strived to be honest with myself and with the people I talk to when starting relationships. It's tough to balance that with my own desires for intimacy and companionship, since I tend to jump headlong into things. And anyways, who can say they're truly ready for anything? Kids? Marriage? Partner? I guess at the time I felt ready.
I was in an abusive relationship for almost 4 years. He started out sweet and slowly began the whole gaslighting routine until he was policing how I dressed, kicking me out of his car around town, throwing things, guilt-tripping me for sex, and when I'd say no he'd go ape shit, screaming, throwing things, and threatening me. He was whittling away at my friends, preventing me from having hobbies, guilt-tripping me for being involved in extracurriculars, constantly accusing me of cheating and checking my phone, and eventually frequently sexual assaulting me. I had a terrible home life and every man in my life had been dog shit at this point, so I genuinely believed all men were like this and I was too afraid to leave. Eventually I met my now BF, and hopefully soon future husband, when I got to college. We started out as friends and eventually had obvious crushes on each other. He showed me what kindness and love was, and I came to realize is genuinely the first and only person in my life to actually love me. It kinda caught me in a guilt loop where I was doubling down on the relationship because I was afraid of my ex, but also because I felt guilty because his cheating accusations were becoming true emotionally at this point. Eventually I did physically cheat on him, from kissing to then down the line having sex. A few months later I broke up with my ex. He still doesn't know I cheated. His bullshit doesn't justify my cowardice, and I still wish I would have just knucked up and done it without marring my soul with the stain of having ever cheated.
I also gave into lust. I could not suppress my inner primate. The alcohol didn't help either. In retrospect, subconsciously, I was also looking for a way out with an extremely possessive, insecure, and manipulative partner. I was afraid to break it off. I knew a traditional breakup wouldn't have been gone down any different than an unmitigated disaster no matter what. Just awful. Took her rage out on my house and damaged my property. Talked shit to friends and family, made stuff up. Took the low road. But so did with my decision to step out. It seemed like the right thing to do at the time. I regret it now. What can I say? I'm an awful person. But hey, I stopped drinking.
Was trapped in a relationship, countless attempts to end it, but nothing ever worked. Cheating is a hammer, and sometimes you gotta drop the hammer.